Hello everybody, I'm Evelyn Henry of TaxPlus, and today I want to talk to you about tax preparer fraud. And I just want to read some information to you that I found on the IRS website. And it states that return preparer fraud generally involves the preparation and filing of false tax returns by preparers who claim inflated personal or business expenses, false deductions, unallowable credits, or excessive exemptions on returns prepared for their clients. Preparers may manipulate income figures to fraudulently obtain certain tax credits. In some situations, the client or taxpayer may not have knowledge of the false expenses, deductions, exemptions, and/or credits shown on his or her returns. However, when the IRS detects the false return, the taxpayer, not the return preparer, must pay the additional taxes and interest and may be subject to penalties. It also states, while most preparers provide excellent service to their clients, the IRS urges taxpayers to be very careful when choosing a tax preparer. Taxpayers should be as careful as they would be in choosing a doctor or a lawyer. It is important to know that even if someone else prepares a tax return, it is the taxpayer who is ultimately responsible for all the information on the tax return. It says reputable preparers will ask to see and encourage you to have receipts and keep good records, and will ask you multiple questions to determine your qualifications for expenses, deductions, and other items. By doing this, they are trying to help to avoid any penalties, interest, or additional taxes that could result from an IRS examination. Now, I thought this was something good to go over because there's a lot of information out there on the internet, on videos or even CDs or DVDs for sale that encourage people to take all kinds of deductions and expenses that are inflated and outrageous. Some of them are just outrageous. And you may ask yourself, if it's so wrong, why are they openly just making these statements? Well, if you think about it, it's one thing to actually say the information, to provide the information, to make the statements, but it's a different thing when you have to go ahead and prepare a return and file it, because you, the taxpayer, are ultimately responsible for that information. And they know that. They know when they're making those statements, they're not causing any problems for themselves. They know that the taxpayer is ultimately responsible for everything on that tax return. Also, if you notice, that information could be kind of general, because although they do provide some expenses, deductions that you can be eligible for, they leave out some important information about the documentation, some requirements that the IRS may have in place for you to be able to take those expenses and deductions. And remember that if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. That's what I tell people. Also, the IRS has some helpful hints. It says hints when choosing a return preparer. Be cautious of tax preparers who claim they can obtain larger refunds than other preparers. And that's true, because as long as they're preparing the return correctly, then every preparer is going to get the same result, because the tax calculations should be all the same. So you should be careful of people who right off the bat can tell you that they're going to get you a bigger refund than another preparer. They may not have your best interest in mind. They're thinking about their best interest. Also, avoid preparers who base their fee on a percentage of the amount of the refund, because those who base their fee on your refund amount tend to try to inflate your refund so that they can inflate your the fee that you're going to pay them. And of course, you want to use a reputable tax professional who signs your tax returns and provides you a copy for your records. You should always have copies of your tax return. Like I mentioned, I have people that come to me after the tax season who have had their returns prepared by others, but when they need help, they can't find those tax preparers. They don't even have copies of their tax returns. And I do help them. I help them and I try to reproduce their tax return. I contact the IRS and try to get information. So try to straighten out whatever the problem is. They also state, consider whether the individual or firm will be around to answer questions about the preparation of your tax return months or even years after the return has been filed. Now that's important because a lot of preparers who may not have your best interests in mind will be there to prepare the return, but later on when you need them to explain a couple of things, when you need to have copies, they are nowhere to be found. So you want to make sure that they're reputable. They've been in business for a while. They're going to be around when you need them, when you need to ask questions. Also, it says to review your tax return before you sign it and ask questions if you don't understand. You know, maybe not all tax preparers will go line by line because that is a lot of information. What I do, and especially when there are a lot of deductions, I show my clients, these are all the deductions. These are all the expenses that we're claiming on the tax return. I show them the bottom line and I go over and I explain the tax return as much as possible so that they can understand, and I encourage them to ask questions to make sure that when they sign that tax return, they know exactly what they are signing. And also it states right here on the IRS website, no matter who prepares the tax return, you are the one, the taxpayer is going to be the one that is ultimately responsible for all of the information on the tax return. And of course, never sign a blank tax return. It's good, of course, to find out the person's credentials. Ask other people who have used that tax preparer to see how the service was, what they thought about it. See if that person is going to be around when you need them. And find out if they are affiliated with a professional organization. And most importantly, ask those questions. Ask the questions, make sure you know exactly, because you are the one that is responsible. And again, remember, if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. Okay, so that's it for right now. Thank you very much for listening. Please go ahead and visit our website at TaxPlus1040.com, where we have a small business section with information about deductions and expenses. And again, until next week, it's Evelyn Henry of TaxPlus. Bye-bye now.